things. When we begin the teachings with saying the Heart Sutra, which is the most condensed version of the Prajnaparamita Sutras that the Buddha taught in the second turning of the Dharma wheel. And we recite this in order to clear away hindrances and interferences to listening and understanding the teaching. So that doesn't necessarily mean outside interferences, but the biggest interference we have to understanding the teachings is our own ignorance. And the Heart Sutra speaks about the nature of reality and how to perceive the emptiness of inherent existence, which is the exact opposite of what ignorance perceives. So if we contemplate the Heart Sutra while we're reciting it and get some feeling for dependent arising and emptiness, then that tampers our ignorant view, and by lowering the ignorance and getting a little bit of wisdom in there, then attachment and aversion can't run the show. Because attachment, aversion, anger, jealousy, all these things depend on ignorance to operate. Okay, so that's why we say the Heart Sutra at the beginning of teachings. Then we do the Mandala offering, thinking that we offer the entire universe and everything beautiful in it. And like I was saying yesterday, everything we're attached to, the people, the prestige, everything we're clinging to, we put all that in the mandala and we offer it. And when we're offering the mandala, at the beginning of teachings, it's with the request, please teach, okay? And that's what the second verse of the mandala that we chant before teachings is doing, is requesting the teachings. So we don't just come to the Buddha Dharma empty-handed like consumers and say, okay, I'm here, now you entertain me, you give me the product that I showed up for. But rather we come with a humble attitude. We make offerings and we offer our body, our speech, our mind, everything we're attached to, because we see the value in the Dharma teachings, and we see that the teachings are more precious than anything we usually cling on to in our life. So that, getting ourselves to that point where we really see the Dharma as something precious, it takes some time and some meditation and some wisdom on our part, because usually in our lives, what do we see as precious? Everything that makes us perfectly happy. Whatever makes me comfortable, whatever makes me look right, whatever helps me to win arguments, whatever helps me to be loved and popular, all of that is seen as valuable. And but all of that just contributes to us going round and around and around in cyclic existence again and again and again. So, we have to have some wisdom to see this pattern and how we keep ourselves trapped, and thus to at least mentally relinquish and give away all these things that are objects of our attachment, aversion, and ignorance. And we do that in order to receive the teachings. Because if we come to the teachings with our usual ignorance, anger, and attachment, the teachings aren't going to go into our minds very well. First of all, because we're going to have a hard time paying attention, because we're going to be daydreaming about the next samsaric pleasure we can get. Yeah, or we'll be angry at somebody and plotting our revenge. So, if we don't kind of relinquish these ordinary attitudes, we're not going to benefit very much from the teachings. And especially, really seeing that the teachings are what lead us to liberation, and that nothing else that we encounter in our life, no matter what it is, can lead us to liberation in the same way. I mean, our friends and our family may love us, but can they lead us to liberation? You know, your parents may love you and you may love them. Can your parents lead you to liberation? Can your husband or wife or best friend lead you to liberation? Can your kids or your pets lead you to liberation? Can you lead them to liberation? You know, when we look at this really, really seriously, we see that there's a lot of people and a lot of pleasurable things and nice things in our life. But at the end of the day, none of them can actually help us have a good rebirth or free ourselves from cyclic existence. Yeah, and so that's why they are objects of our ignorance, anger, and attachment. So that's why we offer them in the mandala, and we request teachings. You know, I'm willing to give up these things of my samsaric grasping in order to have the teachings, because I realize that the teachings are what are really going to benefit me in the long term. Yeah. So as much as we can have that kind of awareness and that feeling inside, then that much our mind is receptive and open to the teachings. Yeah, but when we're just hanging on to our worldly pleasures, we're not really very receptive. Like I said, first of all, we don't pay attention, and second of all, when we hear something that contradicts our attachment, we say, "Oh, that's stupid," and throw it away. You know, why should I practice that? How ridiculous. Okay, so it takes a while for us just to cultivate the right kind of attitude for having teachings. Yeah, so that's why we do, one of the reasons why we do the mandala offering is to cultivate that attitude. And then after that, we take refuge and generate bodhicitta. You know, again, because, like I was explaining yesterday, that way we know what spiritual path we're following and also why we're following it. Okay? So I'm sure some people aren't going to like when I say, you know, can your best friend and your lover lead you to liberation? You know, of course not. They're not going to like when I say that. Like, but my best friend, my lover, my parents, my kids, they mean the whole world to me. You know, I never want to be separate from them. They love me, they support me, they encourage me. Yeah? And that's great, but can they lead you to liberation? Can they prevent you from taking rebirth? You know? No, they can't. They can't. Yeah? So we really have to put these things in a proper perspective. Yeah? So of course, you know, we cherish those people, but we also realize, you know, they can't lead me to liberation. At the end of the day, you know, when I go on to the next life, you know, they can't help me at all. What's really going to help me is my refuge in the three jewels. What's really going to help me is, you know, how much I've practiced during my life. So the karma I take with me, that's what's really going to benefit. Now, everything else stays behind here. Doesn't it? Hello? Yeah? I mean, this is reality. It all stays behind here. So you may work your whole life to earn a lot of money. Not 1 cent comes with us to the next life. Yeah? You can work and have fantastic relationships. Those people don't come with you to the next life. You can climb your professional ladder and get to higher stages with great prestige and power. That all evaporates, you know, when you die. Actually, before you die. Doesn't it? Yeah? I mean, you look at like Ronald Reagan, President of the United States, and then Alzheimer's, and he, you know, can't even construct a sentence. So, you know, that disappears even before. So it's really important, you know, to get our priorities very clear and very straight in our life. And then we can live in a very meaningful way. And when we die, there's no regrets at all. Yeah. I got an email last night from one very dear Dharma friend, Ruth, who is the translator for one of my precious teachers, Geshe Sonam Rinchen. And Geshe-la has been, he's been quite ill with stomach cancer for a number of years, and he's been having transfusions, and, because he's losing so much blood, and his hemoglobin count is so low. And he eventually said, a couple of weeks ago, he doesn't want any more transfusions. And it was very interesting that Ruth, through there are a lot of circumstances. I won't tell the whole story, but she was able to arrange for Geshe-la to meet with His Holiness. His Holiness was leaving Dharamsala to go on a trip. Geshe-la was down near the library. He's in a wheelchair. He can't. He's so weak. I mean, there was no way he could go up the hill. I think it'd been quite difficult for him to go up to see His Holiness. So they brought him to the side of the road when His Holiness, entourage, when they were driving down the road, they stopped, and His Holiness got out of the car and went over to the wheelchair and, held Genla's head and spoke to him and told him, your life has been very meaningful, and there's nothing to worry about. And Genla had said to His Holiness, asking him to please live for eons and please to never be separated from him. And so then Genla said, then His Holiness told him, you take rebirth as a little boy and come, and then we'll meet again. And and it was short. It was about 5 minutes, but can you imagine when you're about ready to die, for His Holiness, who for Genla was, his most supreme teacher, saying to you, you've had a meaningful life, and you don't have to be afraid of anything. Yeah. And so that was a couple of weeks ago. And apparently afterwards, Genla kept saying to the attendants, did His Holiness really say that? Did His Holiness really say? What did it? Tell me again what His Holiness said. It's like he couldn't believe his ears, which I can understand, because I had a similar experience once. And, you're just kind of like, huh? So anyway, Ruth wrote me last night that she's seen a change in Genla, that there's the light in his eyes is not there, and the doctor came and said that he noticed a decline in the last few days too, and that don't force him to eat or drink and just let him be. And so Ruth wrote me, it'll probably be soon, probably within a week, that he dies. And Ruth has been his translator for, oh my goodness, over 30 years, and has been his disciple even longer than that. And so I know how much, this is very difficult for her. And, he's also one of my precious teachers. And so she wrote at the end of the email, and she said, please pray that, he dies well and has a good death. He's not in any pain. But I thought, Genla might be in pain, and he's just not showing it, knowing him. But she said he's not in pain. And I wrote her back, and I said, I don't have any worry about how Genla's going to pass. He's been a monk since he was like this little. He's kept his precepts purely. He's followed his teacher's instructions. He's a very humble monk, and a geshe. And, right before he dies, His Holiness tells him his life is meaningful and, to not worry about anything. I said, I have no worries at all about how Genla's going to die, and I think it'll be just like a bird, flying off from a ship, when that he'll just go and he won't look back and cling to anything, and there will be no trace in the sky where he flies, and he'll just go on, with his compassionate bodhicitta mind to the next life. And and I wrote that to her, and she wrote back and said thank you. But that's how he's going to die, and I don't have any worries or concerns about anything like that. Yeah, and I think, wow, if I can die the way Genla's going to die, I would be really happy. Yeah. So, so then you look at, okay, how did he practice his whole life? Yeah, he really spent his whole life counteracting his ignorance, anger, and attachment. It wasn't that he spent his whole life enjoying pleasure and then a week before he died decided to practice the Dharma. He spent his whole life purifying and accumulating merit and doing everything. So then nothing to worry about. Yeah. So, yeah. So it'll be a great loss for us, for us as disciples when he goes, because then he isn't there to guide us. But I just look back because I first met him in 1976. Yeah, 76. So he's been my teacher since then. And, over the years, he's taught me so much. But also, he gives such good advice, on just practical things and how to apply the Dharma in difficult situations. He just has, all of his advice over the years has been so helpful to me. Yeah. And so I just feel, when he goes, then it's like, okay, the rest of us have to step up to the plate now. He poured all this nectar into us, and now it's our turn to, pass it on. So that's just kind of the way it goes. And then, of course, to pray to meet him in all future lives. But just, his model of how he lived his life, it's an incredible inspiration and example for us. So, how did I get on that? But anyway, the mandala offering. Yeah. And taking refuge and generating bodhicitta and really putting our priorities very clear, very straight. So, you can learn something from that. Okay, so that's about the prayers that we do at the beginning and why we do them. Okay, at the end of the teachings, again, when we offer the mandala, that time we're offering the universe and everything in it as a way of saying thank you for the teachings. Yeah, and so we make offering at the beginning, we make offering at the end. Yeah, and that process of doing that helps our mind appreciate what we're getting. Okay? Because so often it's so easy for us to take the Dharma for granted, and it's like, oh, it's always here. Get it later. Okay? So then there's a few more things I wanted to say. One is, after the Chenrezig initiation and then the Lung and teaching from Rinpoche yesterday, hopefully we have Chenrezig on the mind, in the heart, and so to really continue that. And the whole retreat, when you're walking around, Chenrezig's on your head, or you imagine Chenrezig in your heart, and you say mantra. as much as possible. So, when you're walking around, instead of kind of daydreaming and things like that, say the mantra or think about the teachings that you've been receiving. Because what we do in the break time is very important, because it influences what happens in the sessions when we're here together. In the same way as what we hear during the teachings and what we meditate on in the sessions will influence the break time. So to really keep our mind immersed in Chenrezig all the time, okay, and immersed in compassion the entire time. Okay. Speaking of Chenrezig, you saw the beautiful statue that we have downstairs that Rinpoche consecrated. Well, there's another Chenrezig who's going to arrive hopefully this week. This Chenrezig was made of bronze, and there's in the Chinese tradition they have at least 84 different manifestations of Kuan Yin. Kuan Yin is Chenrezig, appearing in different forms, and sometimes Kuan Yin can appear as Samantabhadra. Yeah, so Samantabhadra is also one of the 8 great bodhisattvas, and he's in Chinese Buddhism. He's usually depicted as riding on an elephant. Yeah, so we have one statue of Kuan Yin appearing as Samantabhadra, so Kuan Yin on an elephant, made of bronze. Yeah, that is about 4 feet tall. Yeah, something like that. And so hopefully that will be arising this week, and you'll get to see it. Okay. Then some other things. Alex Berzin has his translation of this on his website. Alex has a whole. He uses translation terms that nobody else uses. Yeah. So some people really like it. Some people can't understand it. When Steve and I were having lunch with Rinpoche a couple of days ago, Steve was telling the story of how His Holiness was teaching Maitreya's text, Dalai Lama, in Bodh Gaya in the early 80s, and there was no translation, but Alex would give a review afterwards, and Alex was using his new vocabulary, speaking in English, and nobody could understand him. But many people like his translation terms. Anyway, you can go online and see. And he also said that he gave teachings on the practice in Moscow, and so I think he has the audio recordings of that on his website, which is berzinarchives.com. Okay, then I got an email from Venerable Steve, and on the way down he translated the small print. Okay, now he translated it very quickly, so it's not in whole sentences. Okay, so he said that, it starts with what we have here as the introduction, so that was the, the promise to compose. And then in the small prints, it said, for that here, like several sutras and tantras, not just on one occasion, praise the Guru, because the root of all blessings and attainments depends on him or her. Just making request to the Guru who guides one unmistakenly, seeing him or her as an essence inseparable from one's special deity, is so important as the only foundation and basis of what one has always aspired for. Okay, so what one has always aspired for is full awakening, and having a properly relying on the spiritual mentor is the foundation and basis for attaining that, because you can't you can't really, you don't get the same thing by reading a book that you do from having live teachings from a live human being. It's just completely different. And so once you've had teachings from a live human being, then going back and studying the texts and so on, you can understand what's going on, and the text can be very inspiring. But you really need that personal connection, I think, of somebody who explains the teachings to us, somebody who points out our faults and weaknesses to us, reminds us how to practice, somebody who can encourage us when we need it, and put a damper on our arrogance when we need that. And somebody who acts as a role model for us. So all of this is quite important. And you don't get that from a book. A book can't say to you, you've completely misunderstood what I'm saying. And a book can't say, oh, you forgot to offer your food, like Refuge was saying yesterday. Okay, so as a foundation and basis of what one has always aspired for. And for that, though one is permitted to have faith in the Guru as in essence the meditational deity that one has faith in, given that love, compassion, and the precious awakening mind only are like the life of the Mahayana path, and great compassion is said to be important at the beginning, middle, and end. See, I told you it wasn't in complete sentences. Yogis and yoginis who wish to practice the yoga of the union of their root guru and the supreme deity of compassion, Chenrezig, in a pleasing place, having gathered well the offerings, substances, and so forth, install themselves on a comfortable seat and within an exceptionally virtuous state of mind, go for refuge, generate bodhicitta, and meditate on the four immeasurables as preliminaries. And then we have the preliminaries there. Okay? So here it's saying that, love, compassion, and the precious bodhicitta are like the life of the Mahayana path. Okay, and that's what Mahayana is all about. The fundamental vehicle path, they meditate on love and compassion also, and many of those people have more love and compassion than we do, so there's no reason for us to be arrogant about our practice. But the great compassion is something, really unique to the followers of the Mahayana path, and generating bodhicitta as well. Okay, because one can have compassion, and it's kind of like I look at my compassion, and I'll look and people are suffering and there's difficulties going on, and I'll say, oh, that's really awful, that's terrible, these people are suffering so much, but you go help them, okay, because I'm too lazy and I'm busy and I can't do it, and blah, blah, blah. Okay? So there's compassion there, but no action. Yeah, it's on the level of words and a little bit of the heart. The bodhicitta, you're putting your life energy into what your words are. You're saying, okay, I'm going to be the one that liberates them. I'm going to be the one who teaches them how to be free of cyclic existence. And to do that, I can't continue being this ordinary kind of foolish sentient being. I have to purify my own mind and develop my own qualities. I have to become a Buddha in order to benefit others most effectively. Okay, so that kind of motivation is something really unique to the Mahayana. And, as it says here, that kind of motivation is to be important at the beginning, middle, and is important at the beginning, middle, and end of the practice. Rinpoche mentioned this over the weekend, and he was referring to Chandakirti's homage in his in his book, supplement to Nagarjuna's treatise on the middle way, Chandrakirti. Usually at the beginning of text, people praise the Buddha, or something like that. Chandrakirti praised great compassion at the beginning of his text. And you go, whoa, you praise great compassion, you didn't praise the Buddha? And so then there's this whole explanation of why he praised great compassion and the importance of great compassion in generating bodhicitta, and why great compassion and bodhicitta are important at the beginning, middle, and end of our practice.
Can you repeat the name of that text?
Supplement to Nagarjuna's treatise on the middle way. Okay, in Sanskrit it's called Madhyamika Avatara. Yeah. Okay, so, great compassion, bodhicitta are important at the beginning of the path because that's what gets us moving. It gets us off our tush into, or maybe it gets us on our tush, on the seat, okay? Yeah, and then great compassion and bodhicitta are important in the middle of the practice because that's what keeps us going. When you're in the middle of the practice, sometimes you hit bumps. There's all sorts of things that happen. How do you have the internal strength of mind to keep going? By the force of compassion and bodhicitta. Yeah, so it's they say that compassion and bodhicitta are like the seed at the beginning, like the water and fertilizer in the middle, and then at the end of the path they're like the great harvest that you reap because through practicing with bodhicitta and attaining full awakening, then there's a harvest of realizations and so much ability to really be of great benefit to so many sentient beings. Okay? And so it's due to that bodhicitta, then when one becomes a Buddha, one continues to turn the wheel of Dharma and make, infinite number of manifestations and so on for the benefit of sentient beings. Okay, so His Holiness mentions it here. Yeah. It's very interesting, you see all these kind of little references, a few words here and there, and when you've studied a while, then okay, that's what he's referring to. Yeah, and it kind of brings back what you've learned. Steve also wrote out the mantra the way I heard Pandaraka. Okay, he put it with a B. He put Bandaraka. Okay, but it doesn't really matter. Okay. Yeah. And he said that they do it like this at Namgyal Monastery, which is, kind of the monastery associated with His Holiness in Dharamsala, because His Holiness said it's more correct to do it that way. Okay. I want to find out what the Pandaraka means. I wasn't successful looking it up yesterday online, so I'll have to try I'll try with the B and see what I find. Okay. Pardon?
Translate some of the other words in the mantra?
Could I? Okay. So Oma Guru, okay, Vajradhara, so it's saying that our Guru it's Vajradhara, Guru Vajradhara. Okay, Pataraka, Manjushri is the Buddha of wisdom. But Kendra, I think that's translated as Nawang. Yeah, now here, because when you have the Guru's name mantra, you have the Guru's name in Sanskrit in the mantra. So Vakendra Sumati Jana, okay? So Vakendra is Nawang, Sumati is Lobsang, Jnana is Yeshe. Okay, where's Tenzin? Shasana. Oh, Shasana is Tenzin, the holder of the doctrine. Shasana Dara. Maybe Gyatso is Dara. His Holiness's name. Samudra, I'm not sure. Shri means magnificent. Bhadra is excellent. Sarva Siddhi is all attainments, all realizations. Hum. Okay, so the one way to do the Guru Yoga practice is to say your Guru's name mantra 100,000 times, like this, where it has the name in Sanskrit in it. Another way to do the Guru Yoga practice is you do it of the kind of founder of that particular lineage. So in the Galu, it would be doing Jai Rinpoche's Guru Yoga practice, and that's the Migsema that we chant often, so you would say 100,000 of those, and then the practice you would do would be the one in the red book. On Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga, page 28. Okay, so the Guru Yoga is one of the Nundro practices, or preliminary practices to doing a long retreat. And so, there's these two different ways of doing it. One reciting, like at least in the Galu, you would do the Migsema with that practice on page 28. In Kargyu, they usually do Milarepa's Guru Yoga. In Nyingma, Guru Rinpoche's Guru Yoga. In Sakya, I guess Sakya Pandita? Oh, no, maybe Virupa. Do you know? I'm not sure. Might be... Huh? In Sakya. Yeah? Oh, they do Guru Rinpoche. Oh, okay. Okay. Because usually I would have thought it might have been Virupa or Sakya Pandita.
They have him on the shrine.
Yeah. But almost everybody has Guru Rinpoche somewhere around. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good to know.
The other, when you do His Holiness, that's taking as your root guru, doing their mantra. Does he have root guru?
Yeah, you usually do with root guru. So, but I mean, His Holiness is kind of everybody's guru. In one way or another, It's if he's not your own direct guru, then he's the guru of your guru, So, yeah, somehow everything's kind of going back that way. And we're so incredibly fortunate to have a Dalai Lama like His Holiness. I mean, he really is incredible, as he's not just somebody who's holding an office, that they happen to give him when he was a kid, but he's really an incredible human being and an incredible practitioner and scholar of the Dharma. I mean, it's just amazing. So he's not just some Joe Blow who holds that position. Yeah. And we're actually quite fortunate to have him appearing in the way he's appearing, because if you look back over the whole history of, he's the 14th Dalai Lama, some of them were really, really great, and some of them never made it to maturity. Kind of, the seventh, the great seventh, was the great fifth, yeah, and then the sixth was quite a unique character. The seventh was also a great practitioner and scholar. And then 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, all of those never kind of got very old, and had a chance really to be present there. And so Tibet was really governed by a lot of regents during that time. And then the 13th Dalai Lama was also great, quite amazing. Although they say that he could sometimes have a very stern and wrathful character. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, he was really leading Tibet through a lot of difficult times. And then the 14th. So, yeah.
What did you say about the 7th Dalai Lama?
Yeah, he was also a great scholar and practitioner. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, shall we go back to the text? That was all introduction. But I hope there's some purpose in here. I'm sure there is. Okay, so we were talking about the 7-limb prayer, the purpose of which is to purify and accumulate merit. Okay, remember that. Yeah, and so prostrations purifies our pride and helps us cultivate respect. Offerings purifies our miserliness and helps us develop delight in giving, and accumulates great merit. You know, like I was saying yesterday, I mean, all the Buddhist traditions, you know, the first thing people learn is generosity. And like I said yesterday, even other religions, even secular people, everybody appreciates generosity. When you're doing the 7-limb prayer, okay, it's important to do it with the motivation of bodhicitta. And also, when you do it slowly and really take time to meditate, do it with an awareness of dependent arising and emptiness. Okay, and so specifically, you know, over the weekend, Rinpoche was talking about how things exist dependent on others. You know, that one form of dependence is mutual dependence, long and short, you know, things like this. But here we have, you know, the prostrator, the action of prostrating, and then the ones we're prostrating to. Okay, or we have offering, the object we're offering, the action of offering, the person we're offering to. That all those things, yeah, are dependent on each other. And, you know, we say, oh yeah, they all depend on each other, what else is new? But if you look, the way we think of it is we think, okay, there's an object out here to offer, yeah, out there by itself, sitting there waiting, yeah. There's somebody to offer to, you know, somebody sitting here in the room, okay. They're doing their thing. There's me, I'm the offerer, yeah. And we all kind of are there, and then, which do you see as existing first? Yeah, what do you think exists first? You think okay, so I is the offerer, okay. And then the offering exists next? Yeah? And then the person you offer to exists after that. That's how we see them, right? Yeah? Wrong. Wrong. Because, you know, like if I'm the one giving, I don't become the giver unless there is an object of offering and a person to offer to. Without those two, I can't be a giver. And without the giver and the recipient, this can't be an object of offering. And without a recipient, you can't have an object of offering and a giver. So actually, all three of those are mutually dependent upon each other. It's not that one exists solidly and then gets the other one and does something to the third one in some kind of linear sequence because they're all there. It's they all get their identity in relationship to each other. Yeah. Without the others, there's no way for them to have that relationship. Okay. So this is something very important, because all day long we see things as kind of in these things are cut off. Yeah. So, for example, when you think of the eye consciousness perceiving an object, Okay, so there's the I consciousness here, and it's always an I consciousness, always has been, always will be, just waiting to perceive an object. Okay, there's an object out there, objective, kind of waiting to be seen. There's a sense organ here, that's kind of on its own side, an eye sense source, and we see all these three as quite separate. Yeah. Again, which one do you think exists first in your ordinary way? First, me. I'm here. Okay. Yeah. Then, what do you usually think of? The object. Yeah. And then, then I have an I sense source. That's what helps me realize then that exists. But in actual fact, something can't be a visual consciousness unless there's a visual object and a visual sense source. And the same way, something can't be a visual object unless there is a visual consciousness and a sense source. And a visual sense source can't be that unless there's a visual object and a visual consciousness. So all three get their identity in relationship to each other. Okay? So because things are related in this way, it means that they don't have their own entity in and of itself. Okay? So there's nothing, if we go back to the example of giver, gift, and recipient, there's nothing in me that makes me a giver. Yeah. There's nothing in this that makes it a gift. There's nothing in the other person that makes them a recipient. Yeah. But we all have those identities in relationship to the other two. Okay, which means that we don't exist independently. Yeah, we don't have those roles independently. We don't have some independent essence, which is any of those different roles. Okay, so this gets us into thinking about emptiness as well. Okay. So when you're doing the 7-limb prayer, if you do it slow, you can think about this. And think about how all these things are dependent and how, therefore, they don't have their own essence. Yeah. And somebody's going to say, but whether you give a gift or not, you're still there. But, I might still be there, but am I a giver? Can you say this one's a giver? No. Okay. So you might say, well, the cup is still there, even if it's not given to anybody. So isn't it independent? But it's not a gift unless, there's the giver and the recipient. So then you say, but it's out there anyway, existing there as a cup. Yeah. But again, then you look, and it can only be differentiated as a cup because there's someone who wants to drink from it, and there's something that's getting poured in it to drink from. If it didn't have that function, then it wouldn't be a cup. Would it be? Wouldn't be a cup. Okay. And you say, but it's still there. Well, this thing might be there, but is it a cup? If there's no thought anywhere of somebody using it to drink from and some beverage being poured in it, you would say, okay, but that thing is there, but it's not a cup and it's not a gift. So what is it actually? It only gets whatever identity it has in relationship to other things. You'll say, well, it's the thing sitting on the table. Well, then it only gets the identity of things sitting on the table in relationship to the table. Yeah. So whatever identity you give it, whatever you label it, it only gets that in relationship to other things. It doesn't have any identity or essence on its own. Yeah. So it's quite interesting to really, go into this and really dissect it, because we're sure, there's this thing there, out, look, I can touch it. I know it's there. Yeah. But I can touch it only because there's tactile sense organ and tactile consciousness. So it doesn't get the identity as a tactile object unless there's tactile consciousnesses and tactile sense sources. Yeah.
Could you explain that same idea in relationship to Chenrezig?
Okay. So Chenrezig is a Buddha. He only has the identity of a Buddha in relationship to there being sentient beings, in relationship to there being cyclic existence, in relationship to there being nirvana and non-abiding nirvana. Yeah, Chenrezig also completely dependent on other factors. Yeah, to get that identity as the Buddha of compassion. Yeah, to be the Buddha of compassion, there has to be compassion. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Similarly, samsara and nirvana are posited in relationship to each other. Yeah, if one didn't exist, the other one, you couldn't identify the other one. Okay. Okay. So when they say, sometimes you'll hear people say samsara and nirvana are equal. That doesn't mean on a conventional level samsara and nirvana are equal. If they were, then why are we practicing? We would already, since we're in samsara, we would already be in nirvana. Okay. Yeah, when you hear them say samsara and nirvana are equal, what it means is they are equal in lacking their own inherent essence. And they are, and in that way, because they're all empty of true existence, they both exist dependent on other factors. And when you look at them as mutually dependent, you see they depend on each other. But you can't say samsara is nirvana, nirvana is samsara. That's not correct. Yeah.
So samsara ends.
Mm-hmm.
Or is it just like fish don't know water's wet?
Okay. Well, then that gets into the whole discussion, are all sentient beings ever going to be enlightened, which I don't want to get into because there's a whole big debate about that. But even, it still, something becomes nirvana because there once was samsara. Okay, if samsara never existed, you couldn't posit nirvana. Okay? Okay, then the next one is confessing. Okay? Sometimes confessing is translated as disclosing or revealing. The Tibetan word is but anyway, it means to disclose or to reveal. Yeah. So my mind being oppressed by the stifling darkness of ignorance. Do you feel like your mind is like that? Mm-hmm. Depends on the day, huh? Some days I know everything. Except how to keep my mouth shut. Other days I'm a little bit more humble and realize I'm oppressed by the stifling darkness of ignorance. So under the influence of ignorance, I have done many wrongs. Here it says against reason and vows. I don't think that's a correct translation. Excuse me, whoever the translator was. I think what it's referring here to is naturally negative actions and actions prescribed by the Buddha. So there are some actions that are naturally negative, meaning that when almost any ordinary being does them, they're done with a bad motivation, and so they become a harmful action, like killing or stealing or unwise, unkind sexual behavior, lying, these, things like that. So those are naturally negative, and you create bad karma from doing them. Then there's other things that are prescribed when you've taken precepts. So these actions aren't naturally negative, but the Buddha prescribed them because he felt that it would refine monastic behavior if monastics didn't engage in these actions. So for example, we have precepts not to put vegetables on top of our rice and rice on top of our vegetables, not to ride in a vehicle. These things are not naturally negative, but the Buddha prescribed them. So I think that instead of reason and vows, I think it's referring to naturally negative actions and then prescribed ones. Okay? Whatever mistakes I have made in the past, with a deep sense of regret, I pledge never to repeat them, and without reservation I confess everything to you. So with a deep sense of regret is the important factor in doing purification. If we don't have regret, then we can't really purify, can we, If we don't have regret, we don't even see the action as negative. So with regret, we confess everything, we reveal it, we disclose it, we don't repress it, justify it, deny it, rationalize it, all the usual things that we do. We just say, here it is. Okay? And there's something very psychologically freeing when we just can regret our mistakes. Yeah? Because rationalizing, justifying, blaming, suppressing, repressing, all that kind of stuff, it takes up so much energy. It really takes up a lot of energy. Like if you have you had a bad relationship with somebody, and in your mind you're saying everything is their fault, or you're saying everything is my fault. Yeah, either one of those two. Yeah. Then you're spending an awful lot of mental energy reifying this situation and making it quite concrete. Yeah, because nothing is totally somebody else's fault, and nothing is totally my fault. In fact, I think we should do away with the idea of fault altogether. Yeah, and just say, I have responsibility for my negative motivations and unfavorable and, obnoxious behavior. And other people have their responsibility for their part of it. But, I'm acknowledging my part of it. I'm not going to, pretend that I'm like Little Miss Perfect in this whole thing. Yeah. And I'm not going to spend 10 minutes explaining to you how it's really not my fault. You know how when we get defensive? Yeah, people just make some small comment. Yeah, like somebody says, "Oh, could you please put the chair in the other room?" Well, it wasn't me who put it out here, and it's not really my responsibility to put it back there, and you didn't tell me to do it before. And, we just go into total defensive mode, and all the person said is, "Can you put the chair in the other room?" Yeah? Do you have certain things where, somebody just makes some innocuous comment and boing, you're just in defense mode? Yeah.
Is that the meaning, or are you getting at the meaning of the verse in the 8 verses where it goes, when someone has everything?
Trust hurts me very bad. I will see that person as my supreme teacher. Yeah. So, actually, what I'm saying pertains to a lot of verses in the Eighth Atta. Yeah? But to a lot of them, yeah. I mean, somebody hurts us, see them as our teacher. What can I learn from this situation? Instead of, oh, they did this to me and they did that to me and it wasn't my fault and blah, 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 and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, well, what can I learn about how my own mind functions and my own distorted conceptualizations? Yeah, or my own inconsiderate behavior. And then, then you make use of the situation and you learn something from it and you go forward instead of spending so much energy, well, it really isn't my fault, or it was totally my fault, or, it's half their fault and half my fault, but my fault only happened because they did this. And I only have these bad habits anyway because of my parents and because of my teachers and, that whole trip. So it's just like, let's drop all that. Let's just drop it and let's look. And like, okay, I made a mistake. There it is. Everybody knows it anyway. Don't they? So who are we trying to impress? So it's actually, some kind of relief. Just, okay, I did that, I regret it, I'm learning from it, and now I'm going on in my life with, a new resolve and with greater confidence to live in a much better way. And I know I can do that. Okay? And they say, especially with confession, that it's very good to meditate on dependent arising, and to see the action, that you as the person who did the misdeed itself, the action of doing it, that all of these elements are dependent on each other. Okay, so that means you are not an inherently existent sinner. Okay? Yeah, if you grew up with the idea of being a sinner, you have to throw it out. Because it doesn't fit. There's no such thing as an inherently existent sinner. I made a mistake. I'm a mistake maker. Sometimes, not all the time. Yeah, only sometimes. And I'm a mistake maker in a relationship to there being a mistake. Yeah. And if I really analyze, when exactly did that mistake happen? Okay. When exactly was the mistake? Was the mistake when I had the first thought of doing that? Was the mistake when I did the rest of the preparation? Was the mistake when I did the action, but the action maybe took 5 minutes, so was the mistake the first minute or the second minute or the third minute? Was the mistake at the end? When exactly did the mistake occur? Okay. So again, you're getting this idea of, oh, okay, things exist conventionally when we don't search and try and find, the essence of things. We say, I made a mistake, and it's true. When we try and search and identify exactly what the mistake was and at what moment it happened, it's like hard to find exactly what it was. Then we see, well, actually, what I'm calling mistake is there was a basis of designation. There was a motivation. There was these kinds of actions. There was this period of time. There was this way of thinking during the action, this way of thinking at the end of the action. All those different things together we label mistake. Yeah. So the mistake exists in dependence on all those different things. Yeah. There's no like concrete, you made a mistake that is now existing forever and ever, and like that. Okay.
One way to solve it, keep it going forever and ever, just keep doing it.
Yeah. Okay, so very important to meditate on dependent arising and emptiness, on all of these here. Well, we did one verse. That's good. Okay, so this, again, confession at the 7 limb prayers comes in both these sadhanas. So good to do that.